And closer to home, sheriff's detectives in San Diego are trying to determine if a wayward deputy who was killed when he beat and tried to rob a man had an accomplice. Deputy Michael Stanwich was shot and killed Wednesday by a fellow officer who found him in a suburban home threatening to kill a man. Witnesses say a second man ran from the house just before Stanwich forced his way in with a gun and stocking mask. Investigators believe he was after a large amount of cash in a household safe. And here in Los Angeles, there is speculation that gang members may have mistaken sign language between two deaf people for hand signals of a rival gang. The deaf woman was killed and her companion was critically wounded in a drive-by shooting Tuesday night. Warren Wilson has more.
Police say 19-year-old Juliette Qualls and her companion were seen leaving this liquor store speaking in hand language. Both were mysteriously shot a block and a half down the street as they were getting out of their car in front of the home of a longtime friend.
As they were about to get out of their car and go into the house, another car came up and opened fire. And the female was killed and the male was shot in the face.
Neighbors were hostile at reports connecting gangs to the killing without substantiation. They slammed their doors when approached. About 18 months ago, police say a 30-year-old deaf man was killed and his deaf brother wounded by an associate of the skinhead gangs during a confrontation. Authorities say the victims apparently didn't understand what was happening because they couldn't communicate verbally. The two killings have generated concern among agencies working with the handicapped, especially circumstances surrounding the Qualls killing. The Independent Living Center has strong reasons to disbelieve published reports of why she was killed.
If somebody is hearing impaired speaking to another hearing impaired using sign language, it's not going to be slow, it's going to be very quick. After all, I mean, this is your method of communication. There's no facts to point to that it was in fact a gang-related shooting and that somebody had mistaken these signs as a gang signal.
The Independent Living Center says it has no record that gangs have ever mistaken communications between deaf people and killed them because they thought they were using rival gang signs. Police say they are still investigating, but have no concrete evidence that black gangs were involved, despite published speculation that that's what happened to Qualls and her companion. From Van Nuys, Warren Wilson, Channel 5, News at 10.
Orange County Sheriff's deputies are stepping up their search for two inmates who escaped from a medium-security jail Wednesday. Casimiro Sanchez and Jose Cruz fled the Theo Lacy Branch Jail in Orange. Both were in custody pending trial on unrelated drug charges. Their last known addresses were in the Anaheim area. Sheriff's officials say they do not consider either escapee a threat to the public.
Good evening. Top story on the news at 6 o'clock. Two robbery suspects shot, one fatally, after leading police on a high-speed crosstown chase. Police are still trying to put it all together. This started at about 3 o'clock this afternoon in downtown L.A. Officers shot and wounded one suspect near 6th Street and Figueroa. A second suspect took off in a pickup truck, police in pursuit. The chase ended in southeast L.A. Officers at the scene say that suspect shot himself. Police are checking on whether the suspects were involved in an armed robbery at the Jewelry Mart. Keith.
Of course, and the LAPD is involved in another excessive force controversy tonight. It started with the shooting death of a teenager in southeast Los Angeles this afternoon. But that investigation is taking a back seat to a brawl between police and grieving relatives. Jody Baskerville has details.
A homicide investigation into the shooting death of 17-year-old Willie Nichols in south central Los Angeles touched off a violent confrontation between family members and police. More than 50 officers were needed to bring things under control. Witnesses say they used excessive force to do it.
About 4 or 5 of them grabbed me, and they struggled me right here in this area to the ground, and jumped on my sister, my niece, and a whole bunch of other people that was standing out here.
And then they started hitting me all in the back of my ear and on my fingers, grabbing us, tackling us, and harassing us.
What were they saying to you, Yvonne, when they were doing this?
They weren't saying anything but like, get back, move, move, move.
To continue their investigation, homicide detectives had to get a search warrant in order to gain access to the victim's grandmother's house. That's when the trouble started.
I couldn't believe my eyes right after the Rodney King incident. You would think that they would have some kind of stability somebody with some kind of common sense or authority that would calm the situation down.
After what police are describing as a brawl, 6 people were arrested for interfering with a police investigation. One man was charged with battery on an officer.
There was a melee, and it definitely got out of hand.
But not excessive force, in your opinion?
Oh, I didn't see any excessive force.
17-year-old Willie Nichols' younger brother was shot to death 2 years ago on the very same street.
It's a police work that had to be done, and sometimes you do things that people don't like what you're doing, and we understand their grief.
Relatives say they plan to file a complaint against the LAPD. Jody Baskerville, Channel 2 Action News.
Meantime, more fallout tonight from a police disturbance in a south central Los Angeles neighborhood. Nearly 50 officers clashed with residents last night after a teenager was shot to death. Now, Congresswoman Maxine Waters is calling for an investigation of possible police brutality. Tony Ginyard joins us live with the latest. Tony?
Well, many of the officers responding to last night's disturbance came from here, the LAPD Southeast Station. Now, we came back tonight to find out some answers. Why did that altercation have to happen? And I was told that since the family refused to allow policemen inside the house during the investigation, they were forced to wait outside for 5 hours while waiting for a search warrant, and their presence made the situation worse before it got better. They are images we won't soon forget. Distraught family members of a slain 17-year-old going head-to-head with LAPD officers. Officers on the scene to investigate the murder. LAPD Sergeant Lon Salzman watched our unedited videotape of the altercation.
Those 2 ladies that were arrested were simply causing too much of a problem to keep any kind of order at that scene at all.
When it was over, 8 people had been arrested, 6 charged with interfering with an investigation, 2 others for misdemeanor battery on a police officer.
We don't want to be mean to the family members at all, but in the case of this, the family members did, give us a little bit of a hard time, and they broke the lines, they went up on the porches, they tried to get to the body, and it's very difficult for the officers to deal with that, and I think they did as good as they could.
Did they use excessive force, in your opinion?
No, not at all. But
neighbors claim excessive force was used. One person showed us a videotape saying these pictures showed police brutality. Congresswoman Maxine Waters' office was even called.
We want to ensure, as a Congresswoman always has wanted to ensure, that there is not a use of excessive force, particularly in our community, as we have historically been told over the years through numerous accounts of complaints to our office. This is not a first.
One girl's cry, "They're gonna kill us," caught Kay Hickson's attention.
And that said a lot to me about her life and what she's been through and what the community has experienced in terms of the police.
Both sides agree the disturbance did not have to happen, but they disagree on who is at fault. Now, Congresswoman Maxine Waters has requested the incident be brought up at the next police commission meeting. The family involved in the altercation, many of them have already contacted an attorney, and the police say they were simply doing their job. I'm Tony Ginyard reporting live from South Central Los Angeles.
Other news, Long Beach police have arrested a parole violator in connection with 2 stabbing attacks, vicious ones, on women this week. In the latest crime, the victim was a pregnant woman who lost her baby in the attack. Elizabeth Anderson has the latest.
It's been really scary, really, for everybody in this building.
Screams for help woke Janet Kirkwood in the middle of the night. Screams that grew louder as she got to the back of her apartment building. And when she got there, she couldn't believe her eyes.
That's where they found her right now, right here. But she was screaming and talking about he raped me and he stabbed me 2 times.
What Kirkwood didn't know is that the 23-year-old woman who was 6 months pregnant was about to lose her fetus. She had been raped and then stabbed in the abdomen. The police say this is their key suspect, connected to both of the assaults in Long Beach. 38-year-old Benny Lee Hendricks, also of Long Beach, now behind bars, facing charges of rape, murder, and attempted murder. Extreme, intense fear is exactly what this woman felt early Thursday morning, when a woman's screams brought her to her front door. She says she was about to become an important eyewitness to Thursday's rape.
I seen him hitting on her, and she had kicked him. Okay, made him fall to the ground. And then he apparently
fell to the ground, and she got up running, and the next minute I know I was heard and screaming, I got stabbed, I was stabbed.
Ironically, the suspect, Hendricks, was already behind bars for something else, a parole violation. But it didn't take investigators long to figure out this was their man, the key suspect in connection to the rape case of Long Beach. They said it was the victim's descriptions that helped them the most. In Long Beach, Elizabeth Anderson, Channel 4 News.
And this news tonight, the FBI says it was a rare bomb part that led them to a suspect in the bombings at 2 Internal Revenue offices in Los Angeles. Agents traced the item to an aerospace company, and eventually they arrested 45-year-old Dean Harvey Hicks of Costa Mesa. Hicks was charged yesterday in the L.A. case. He's a suspect in a Fresno attack as well, where 13 pipe bombs were lobbed at a regional IRS service center there. Other news, Pacific...
Good evening. Here's what's happening. The Christopher Commission released more damning transcripts today. Transcripts taken from computers in LAPD patrol cars. First of all, a warning. The language may be offensive to some. Chris Blatchford has details.
Thank you. The Christopher Commission handed out a 94-page copy of computer transmissions this morning with no comment. But Commission member Leo Estrada later told Channel 2, as commissioners read the transcripts, they were overwhelmed by what they saw.
Police department here that was allowing behavior that was totally reprehensible to us.
The MTD transcript focused on several categories, one being racial ethnic. For example, you can see the color of the interior of the vehicle, dig. You stops cars with black interior. Bees they Naugahyde, Negro hide. Other messages discussed excessive force or beatings. For instance, beating time is near. Where you be? In the projects. Raj. Good hunting. Other conversations reflected women bias. Guess it never pays to be nice to screaming bitches. Nor did gays escape the computer messages. Did your fag have AIDS? Probably they all do. Jail is the perfect place for them. Has all the boys around. Boy, is he lucky. And several transmissions suggested white supremacy feelings. KKK, you there? I'm off this Friday. Single, let's do lunch. By the way, do you still have the KKK meeting on Friday? Some cops suggest much of what is on these pages is merely gallows humor to ease tension on a tough job. But Police Protective League President George Aliano says that doesn't matter.
It's embarrassing. It's not tolerated. It's not acceptable, and it shouldn't be there.
Chris Blatchford, Channel 2 Action News.
Mayor Bradley is angry about the tone of those messages, and he blamed police department leadership for allowing them to occur.
And the real issue is what was done about it. What kind of management control was exercised in these cases? And it's not just 2 or 3 officers. This thing cuts across the whole department and is something which I think has to be dealt with in a very vigorous fashion.
The mayor once again called on Chief Daryl Gates to reevaluate his position and then resign.
Good afternoon. Here's what's happening. More startling information today from the Christopher Commission. 94 pages of police computer transcripts were released, and what they show is not ready for an LAPD recruiting poster. The transcripts are disturbing and may be considered highly offensive. We get more now from Channel 2's Chris Blatchford.
Sure. Christopher Commission members would not comment today on these computer transcripts other than to say they record 182 days of messages between LAPD units between November of 1989 and March of 91. The transcripts focus on several categories, one being racial and ethnic slurs. For example, you can see the color of the interior of the vehicle, dig. You stops cars with black interior. Bees they Naugahyde, Negro hide. Other transmissions dealt with excessive force. Example, beating time is near. Where you be? In the projects. Raj, good hunting. I'm off this Friday, single, let's do lunch. By the way, do you still have the KKK meeting on Friday? Another category, shootings. Here is another example. They give me a stick, they give me a gun, they pay me 50 G's to kill. On women, guess it never pays to be nice to screaming bitches. On gays, did your fag have AIDS? Probably they all do. Jail is the perfect place for them, has all the boys around. Boy, is he lucky. George Aliano, president of the Police Protective League, notes this is a very small percentage of the MDT computer transmissions, not a significant pattern of normal police activity. He says it should not be tolerated, however, and he believes it is going to be stopped. Also, another police source tells Channel 2, a lot of what we see on these transcripts is gallows humor used by police to relieve tension. He doesn't apologize for it, however, and he adds it is not professional and there is clearly a lot of work to be done.
Is there any way to tell whether these particular transcript messages come from what the Christopher Commission calls a smaller segment of the entire police force? And as you know, you were there yesterday, Chief Gates defended the majority of his officers.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I mean, you know, you hear what they say and you hear what somebody else says, and you have to make your own decision on that. I mean, clearly, these, I think the chief said, are 0.2% of the computer transmissions. I don't think anybody's refuting that it's a small percentage, but, you know, a small percentage saying these kinds of things in any organization is certainly something that people have to look at, is what the Christopher Commission says, and not many of us probably disagree with that.
All right, Chris.
No minority or ethnic group went unnoticed by the car-to-car computer messages. Here are just a few. Well, just slap that silly broad senseless. How many homosexuals did you give orals to today? Almost got me a Mexican last night, but he dropped the damn gun too quick. And